Coffee with Kate. Today is Friday the 12th of March. I'm Kate. You can find me on Instagram as Kate_Hawthorn Cottage Craft, on Ravelry as a runner bean, and we have a Ravelry group for the podcast called Hawthorn Cottage Craft Podcast. I also have a Ko-fi account if you'd like to support the podcast, and all the links to all the places you can find me are in the description box below this video. You're very welcome if this is your first time here. You have joined us on a Coffee with Kate episode. These happen every 2 weeks in between the normal podcast episodes, and we just sit and chat about whatever's on my mind or whatever somebody maybe has requested me to talk about in a bit more depth. This is number 4, if I haven't said that. And we've had a few interesting ones about needles, and I've given you a tour of my yarn room if you want to go back and have a look at those. But you're very welcome if you are here for the first time, and you're most welcome back if you are a returning viewer. I hope you all have your coffee or your tea or whatever it is you're drinking and just enjoying at this time as we chat. How are you all doing? Are you well? Are you doing okay? I just want to know that everybody is well. It has been an interesting year. I wasn't sure what to talk about today, and this has been actually playing on my mind for a little while. We're fast approaching next week, I think it is, where we're hitting the 1 year from the first lockdowns. And I think lockdown and this whole pandemic has had a big effect on our mental health. It certainly has on mine, and if anybody is a returning viewer, you will know that my mental health has been something I have had to deal with for a long time, and I think in the past year it has been put under strain, just as it has for everybody else. But what I've noticed from Instagram and just reading people's posts and watching other people's podcasts is that I'm not alone in this. Even those who haven't normally struggled with their mental health or had issues with mental health, I think everybody is struggling at the moment. They're really starting to find it difficult just in the day-to-day. Every day is the same as the previous day, and for the foreseeable future may still be the same. And it's been a bit of a roller coaster, and I have noticed my health in the last few months, mental health, has certainly really hit that roller coaster. There have been many things that I have enjoyed about lockdown, the time with family and maybe getting time to slow down. But there are many things that I'm looking forward to getting back to. I don't know if you're aware of a YouTube channel called Green Renaissance. It's not knitting related, but it's a channel that I found over lockdown, I think. And it's one that deals and talks about different issues people face. And it's a beautifully shot video, and I'll link it below if you're interested in having a look. But certainly, in the most recent episode, there was a lady speaking about lockdown and saying that we're all experiencing grief for our lives past and the lives that we once had. It's not that we enjoyed all of it, but we're grieving for the things that we did enjoy. And for me, it's getting out and going to my knit group, or just going further than 5 or 6 miles from my home and going to the places that I love to go to for a walk that aren't particularly far away, but we're still not allowed to go to at the moment. And it's things like that. It's the freedom to get out and about. But I think we're all in the same boat, as I said. One thing that when I'm talking about this is anything I say is my experience. It's not prescriptive, and it's not medical advice. I want to point out at the very start of this, if you are really struggling to cope at the moment, seek out professional help, seek out medical help. It is stronger to seek it out than not. It is a sign of strength. It's not a sign of weakness if you ask for help. I will link charities and organisations who deal with mental health here in the UK. I link those in the description box below. If there are some from other parts of the world and that I don't know about that will apply to people living there that you know of, put them in the comments below so that people can read through and see. I will look at it from the UK perspective. But if you are really, really struggling and it's getting to the point where you can't cope on your own, please do seek out medical advice and medical help. Anything I talk about here is my experience, but it's really how I have coped, and I want to talk today in this wee chat, just have a chat about the things that I have found really beneficial to me and that have helped me through this really weird time. Throughout this situation, there have been 3 things that I have relied on to help me with my stress levels and to help me cope with the situation and the constant change and concerns and worries that there are surrounding it. Not surprisingly, the main one is knitting. I have really, really lent heavily on my knitting to help me through this. At the very start, I will be upfront and honest, I had lost my mojo. In the very first lockdown, I found it very difficult knitting. And I think a lot of people have felt that at various stages, and it's not, there's no problem from walking away from it completely for a while and just letting it come back. But the way I found to deal with that, and actually which helped just relieve the stress of it, was to keep on doing it even when I didn't want to or didn't feel like it. There were many times, particularly if I was working on a large project, where I would sit down and knit 5 or 6 stitches, maybe even I broke out and knit a full row, and then I would set it down again because I was distracted by something else or just wanted to go and do something else. But I would always come back and do it again, maybe 5 or 6 stitches, and that way I was working through the thing and actually maybe starting to bring the mojo back. But what I also found during that time was that smaller projects were the way to go. And maybe if you're really struggling at the moment with just sitting down to knit big things and everything feels like a monumental task and just, oh, it's just another hurdle to get over, think about doing smaller tasks, small things that make you feel as though you've achieved something and produced something, and that just keep you in the rhythm of working. Crochet was actually one of the things that helped me at the start. The last episode I showed you my granny stripe blanket, and this helped a lot because it's just backwards and forwards. There was no thought I could do. In this one I very rarely sat down to do a full row at the time because they were so wide, but I would do a little bit and then I would set it down and lift it up and set it down. So that certainly helped, but also small projects that I knew I would finish. One of them was to make just little wash, almost for removing makeup pads. I had a little bag of cotton that I'd had for a long time. I think I'd bought it originally to crochet a blanket. It was my pre-knitting days and it didn't happen. So this was sitting there and I thought, do you know what? I'll use it and make some cotton makeup removal pads. I can give some to Amy, I can keep some for myself. And if I have an overflow of them, I can use them as gifts. And I just Googled, because crochet is not my strong point, I Googled crochet circles, maybe even makeup removers, and I just worked at these. I wouldn't look too closely, they may not be perfect, but it didn't matter. It was just to be working with my hands. They're all the pink ones are done. So I worked at those. They would only take maybe 20 minutes or half an hour, and I had something at the end of it. That was important at that time. It helped get me through. It was the repetition and the movement. The other thing I did, and I can't show you the finished objects because I've been using them and I need to make new ones to make them nice and fresh looking, but was I knit dishcloths or washcloths. I've used some of them as face cloths too. Again, I had cotton in the house and I just worked at small projects like this. Didn't take long and you felt you had a finished object at the end of it. So I'll link this book. I don't know where I got it. I've had it for a long time. And I worked some of these patterns into cloths. It's the constant repetition of movement. One of the things I have been doing over the last while is reading this book, and it explains why knitting and crafting in general is really good for mental health. And this is a book that is really worth getting your hands on. It's one of those books that makes you think and you can scribble all over it. There's places for notes and little exercises to do. But this book is Knit for Health and Wellness. And this did the rounds a few years ago on social media. Betsan Corkle is the author. She is was a senior physiotherapist. And there's a really good interview with her on the Christy Glass channel. And I'll link that below. Christy ran a book club based on this book and then interviewed Betsan Corkle for that. So if you want to have a look at that interview in full and hear what she has to say, it's really worth a look, and I'll link it for you. But Betsan Corkle, as I said, was a senior physiotherapist, and through her work in physiotherapy she realised that a lot of motivational issues were because people didn't have something to do. And that's where knitting comes in very much so. And in her later work as an editor in a craft magazine, she realised that a lot of people were saying how knitting had saved them and had helped them through different times. And she was wondering why that had happened. And the one thing I found fascinating in this book is that knitting actually creates a physical reaction in our brains. Apparently, anything we do midline, so across the middle of our body, the camera's too high, but across the middle of our body where we hold our knitting, if we do any activity across our midline, it makes our brains work harder. And so if you're only putting in a few stitches or knitting a row, it is making your brain work hard, and particularly in knitting because you're maybe working a pattern or counting again. And because our brains are having to concentrate so much on what we're doing, it distracts us from anything else that's going on in our minds. And that is one of the reasons why knitting helps people relax into and forget about whatever it is that's bothering them, because they're having to concentrate so much. And I found that fascinating. The other thing she said is that the repetitive movements of knitting, just that constant repetition in knitting or crochet or any of those things, even sewing, I suppose cross stitch and things like that, where you're just doing the same thing over and over again, the same type of movement, increases your serotonin levels, which was amazing to me. And I can understand why, particularly if you've suffered from depression, you know that one of the reasons you suffer from depression is because your serotonin levels drop. But studies have been done and it has been proven that through the repetitive nature of any movement, any repetitive movement, it increases your serotonin levels, which calms you down and helps ease any anxiety and stress. And I just found that totally fascinating. It's a book well worth reading. Another book actually that is worth reading on this topic is this one, The Mindfulness in Knitting. And I'll link both the books in the down bar. Those have been really good because they've shown to me that what I'm doing and pushing through with the knitting actually is of benefit. Sometimes you wonder, is it helping? I know for me, knitting just relieves my stress after a while. Once I get into the rhythm, it really helps. There's actually a quote in this book. The writer quotes the American psychologist and philosopher Timothy Leary, who said, it was to do with the hippie movement in 1966, he said, turn on, tune in, drop out. And that, she has applied this to knitting, and it certainly does apply to knitting. You turn on, just knit. Even actually if you have to rip it out later, just knit or just crochet. Once you've turned on and you start to knit, you tune in to what you're doing. It's again that repetition. Your brain starts to channel into that. That is a physical thing from the position you're knitting in. And then you drop out. You can just relax and forget about things. Sometimes you work through things in your mind when you're knitting, but it gives you that calm and peaceful place. It has for me, where I can deal with those more rationally, those thoughts more rationally. So knitting is definitely, or crochet is definitely one of the ways that has helped me cope with this whole situation. So if you're struggling and you knit, which I'm assuming you do, or you crochet because you're here, just keep going. Half a dozen stitches, a row, something small, anything that helps you get through. The second thing that I have used for coping during this time is reading. My background is in literature. I taught English in high school. My degree's in English literature. So I read deeper books, and I read books that challenge me, that I put a lot of thought into when I'm reading them, that make me think and challenge my views on things and educate me. But particularly during this time, my brain hasn't had the space for that. And that's all right. I don't necessarily need to constantly be thinking deeply. There are times when I just want to tune out, to drop out, to escape. And one of the things I do is to read some books that are just there for a good story. There's no analysing them or looking deeply into how the writer has written the thing, or if there's any hidden meaning, which is what English teachers tend to do. We tend to look at things and dissect them and see the style that it's been written in. My brain hasn't had the space for that. And when I did the tour of the craft room, I had shown, it's over to my right here, I have a bookcase that is just full of fiction, and they're just cracking good stories. There's nothing deep about them, and that is what I want at a time like this. It is pure escapism, just in getting lost in the story and in the lives of these characters. And I thought I would show you a few of them. Some people have asked me to go through them, so I'll do that briefly now. I've kind of picked out one book from a series that I have, which obviously means that I really, really like the writers. The first one is this one. It's The Quilter's Apprentice, and there's a whole series. I think maybe 10 of the books, 11 of the books, and I think there are more. These are about quilting. They're not about knitting. They're about sewing and quilting. Jennifer, I don't even want to pronounce her name because I'll get it wrong. And it's called Elm Creek Quilts Novels. And they're basically about a quilting retreat and the lives of the people who go to these retreats, and maybe the history of the area that the retreat centre's in. And I don't know how they're set in the States, and when it goes into the history, I'm not sure how accurate it is, but for me they're just pure escapist reading. There's a quote here in the back of this: just as the darker sections of a quilt can enhance the brighter ones, the mistakes of the past can strengthen understanding and lead the way to new beginnings. And that is literally the thread that runs through all of the books. It's people's lives and how they have found meaning through the quilting that they're doing. So that was one of them. The rest are all knitting based fiction. One of the first ones I read was the Friday Night Knitting Club, and it is what it says it is. It's about a knitting club based in New York. There's a couple of books, I think, in this series. I think there might be a sequel, maybe 2 more after this. And it's about the shop, a yarn shop, its owner, and the knitting club that is formed around that and their lives. And there is discussion about knitting in it. There's a pattern at the back of it, there's a recipe at the back of it, and there are discussion questions if it's a book club book. So that is the Friday Night Knitting Club by Kate Jacobs. I loved this book and I've read it a few times, and I think I'm actually going to read it quite soon again. This is a series of mystery books. The first one is Death by Cashmere. Sally Goldenbohm is the writer. Again, there's a series, and I think there might be more. I have about 8 or 9 of these as well. And they are set in a beautiful little seaside town called Cape Ann. And again, it's based around a knitting shop, but there's a lot of mystery and kind of murder mystery, which I enjoy as well around it. But there's all the descriptions of the yarn shop and the yarns that they're using, and that just appeals to my yarn loving heart. And you just get involved in the characters and what they're doing. This one, they have a meet-up every Friday night in one of the characters' houses, and the descriptions of the food that they eat, I just want to be there. I want to live this life in this seaside town and eat the beautiful food and drink the beautiful wine and knit with the beautiful yarn. It just sounds idyllic, and at the minute that is really good escapism. So I really enjoy this series. It's one of my favourite series. Another mystery knitting writer is Maggie Sefton, and I think a lot of people are reading her books at the moment. I've noticed a few people on Instagram reading these. Again, there's a full set of them, and they're one of my favourite sets. You can see the reflection in my light. These are set in Colorado. Again, around a craft shop, and they're murder mysteries. This would be my favourite murder mystery series, but I think this series is very good too. It's set around a character called Kelly Flynn, who kind of comes back to live in this area because an aunt has died, and she gets her house and gets to know the locals. And there's always a mystery. Very often when I read these books or read any mystery books, I think sometimes if I knew that person, I think I would avoid them like the plague, because they always seem to have a murderer around them. But they're really, really good escapist books. I think a lot of people know Debbie McComber and her shop on Blossom Street, and there's a whole series of books that she has written all based around the knitting shop on Blossom Street and the different characters that come and go there. I think this is probably one of the most widely known knitting fiction series that there is. And again, in all of these books, I love just the descriptions of the yarn and the shops and the lives that the characters lead, and I just step into those worlds for those times that I'm reading. These are set in the Florida Keys, down in the very, very south of Florida. It's sunshine and knitting and yarn shops, and just when I look out today and it's stormy and wet and there's hail showers and quite cool weather, these are fabulous. because they just transport you automatically to somewhere else. And at the minute, that's what we need, even in our minds, to be transported to other places. Again, they're set round a yarn shop. I think at one point they even spin, one of the characters is spinning dog hair. So they're just really interesting books. There's discussion questions that if you're ever doing it with a knit club or a knit group, that you can do that, or a book club. So those are the main books that I would have at my disposal for escapism. I also love humorous books like The Yarn Harlot, Stephanie Pearl McPhee. They just make me laugh out loud, to the amazement of the family who are kind of going, what's she laughing at now? Those are brilliant. So I can strongly recommend Stephanie Pearl McPhee if you want a bit of humour and just need a good laugh. And her observations of knitting life and knitters is just spot on. She has us all down to a T, and it's good fun to read. So reading, certainly for me, and maybe for you, even audiobooks. I've been listening to a number of audiobooks. I'm not as keen on audiobooks as I am with a paper book, hard copy book, but I have been enjoying some books. I'm not really into autobiography or biography, but I have been listening to Sandy Toksvig's memoir, and I'll link it below. She is a TV personality here. She has hosted the Great British Bake Off, and her memoirs are so interesting, and I think she is a knitter. There certainly have been rumours that she was often knitting on set, whether they're true or not. But that has been easy listening, and I have to say my go-to relaxation listen when it comes to audiobooks is Harry Potter, with Stephen Fry as the narrator. But I like my paper books, and they have been really beneficial to me, and you might find them of benefit too. And I link all of those books, if I can find them again, below. The last thing is actually not knitting or craft related. It is simply getting outside. We're very limited into how far we can go at the moment, and certainly for here with this last lockdown, we're not meant to leave or go beyond, I think it is 10 miles. And certainly they're recommending that if you exercise from your front door rather than driving to somewhere to exercise. So recently I've been trying to get out for walks more, and now hopefully with the weather hopefully getting better, it's easier to get out, and I'm trying to get back into Couch to 5k just for physical as well as mental health. I find they really help. Getting outside really helps my mental health, and I would urge everybody to get outside. It's not everyone is capable of going out to exercise, and that is okay, but sometimes just sitting outside the front door in a coat, if it's a dry day, it's getting the fresh air. I think the fresh air certainly helps my mental health. It's the change of air. It's the fact that I'm not looking at the same four walls for 15 or 20 minutes. I get a change of outlook or scene, and that has been of really great benefit to me. You will have seen just at the start of this little bit a bit of footage. That is from a walk pre-Christmas that I did in one of my favourite places, and it is just outside. It might be on the 10-mile limit, so I haven't gone since the lockdown of Christmas, and I'm really missing getting out to the sea and for walks there. But I have been quite content to walk around my own area, and even on days when I'm not really in the mood to walk, I'll walk around the block and might only be out for 10 minutes. But it is just getting outside and getting a bit of movement and getting the fresh air and letting the air through my head. On a windy day, goes right through. It really feels fresh and just means that I can deal with things that little bit better. Hopefully this has been of some benefit. It's just an encouragement more than anything else. You're not alone in this. We're all in the same boat to varying degrees, and hopefully it will end too soon so that we can get a wee bit of normal life back, where we can meet up and meeting our knit groups and just get out and about and see more than the four walls of our homes. But these have been my ways of coping, and hopefully they will help you as well, and hopefully your crafting is bringing you some peace and comfort and de-stressing through this time. Feel free to chat in the comments below. Tell me how you've been coping and what you've been doing to help you through this period, and encourage each other. It's all about encouragement at the moment. We need to really encourage each other and keep each other going. It's a rough time. It's a rough time in the world in many respects, and we all need a little bit of support, and hopefully you'll have found it here today. I hope you've enjoyed this chat today, and if you did enjoy it, please like and subscribe and hit the bell button if you want notification of when I record again, and enjoy your crafting over the next while.